So I had a few conversations of late with some parents who have a shared sense that their children are slipping out of their reach. And if you've had a child who's gone beyond 5, 6 years of age and started school, becoming more involved with screens, moving towards pre-adolescence or adolescence, you'll know that feeling that more and more children seem to be absorbed by screens and by peer groups. Now, um, I was out with some children who are on the boundary or on the borderline between, or on the threshold, I should say, between childhood and early adolescence. We were out in nature and we're sitting talking, and I had a friend visiting, and this friend of mine, um, she has a very different background than any of the children who were there, any of the young adolescents who were there. She comes from a indigenous group. She grew up in the countryside, in the woods, with her parents, who still followed the old ways. And she started to share her story of her childhood and what it was like. And I noticed that these children who were there, 12, 13, 14 years old, weren't paying her much attention. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't really listen to her. They weren't keenly interested. What they were truly interested in was to share stories about YouTube videos um, and other kind of games related really to Fortnite and other computer games that they play. And it was quite remarkable and quite noticeable. And at the end of the day, I turned to them as they were talking about uh, another interest they had that was unrelated really to the context we found ourselves in, nature and the people who were there, adults with life experiences and backgrounds that could really teach them something, instruct them, guide them through life. And I said, look, this is no fault of yours. This is us adults who have not taken our responsibility, but the world does not revolve around you. You are not the center of the universe. And you've sat here today with this friend of mine, and she's shared something that's wholly unknown to you, and you haven't listened, and you haven't paid attention. You haven't shown any curiosity. You've been caught up in what is most relevant to you, but that's not present here and now. Anyway, I made it very clear that it wasn't their fault, that us adults have done something for them to believe that they don't come from anyone and they don't come from anywhere, and that they are the center of the universe. And children like that will grow up entitled. They will grow up in the way that their childhood is directing them. And so this is something Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Maté talk at length about in their book, Holding On to Your Kids. Now, if you haven't read that book, I highly, highly recommend you do. But I'll in this video here, I'll share with you 4 points in what they call gathering your child back in. That is to say, how we as parents or caretakers or anyone really who has who's one way or another trying to reach children and guide them on a good path in life. So there are 4 things they talk about in how to hold on to the kids and how to maintain those relationships so that they have strong relationships with adults. Because there are a lot of things that happen when children flatline in a way and just relate to peers, because peers in their peer group haven't developed their ethics, their morals, their capacity to be compassionate. So it's quite a hard environment for a child to find themselves in without any adult guidance. Excuse my computer for binging and plinging. Quite fitting given the subject. But so there are a couple of things that Neufeld and Maté say, 4 things to be precise. So the first one that they mention is the importance on focusing on the long-term relationship rather than on short-term behavior. So if these children are sitting there and they're not listening, it's really not helpful to be severe, harsh, or demanding of that they listen in that moment. That would be the short-term discipline of the behavior they're exhibiting. Sure, we can mention it, but it's better to set a long-term arc. Where are we headed? What do we want to nurture in these children? And we take the initiative of doing that. We collect our child back into the family fold. So there's a physical separation, there's an emotional separation, and it's always our responsibility as adults to bridge that separation. No matter what's going on in our lives, no matter what we feel about, if we've had an argument, if we've said no and the child reacts, it is ultimately our responsibility to bridge that divide that has arisen, that separation. And simple ways, really, after a separation, physical or emotional, to greet the child, with gentleness, with a smile, a hug, one way or another, to get in their way, to make sure they know we're there and that we're seeking contact, we're interacting with them, we're enticing them to stay in relationship with us in different ways. We make it interesting. We motivate them to stay in relationship with us. So that's our responsibility, to reaffirm the relationship after any kind of separation, whether it's a short one or a long one. The second one is to give our children something to hold on to. That is to say, something that will have them attached really to us. We show them affection and warmth. We make sure they sense our emotional presence, that we're delighted to be with them, that we're curious about their lives, that we're willing to listen to them. We listen to them. We show them our interests. We show them that they matter to us, and we pause. If we're on our phone or occupied somehow, we take the time to slow down. We take the time to pause. We take the time to hug and embrace them, and let them know that they're valued. Let them know that they're wanted, missed, or that we really enjoy their presence. So that's the second one, to give them something to hold on to. The third one is to invite dependence. There's so much pressure and so much in the language today, which is about independence. And that codependence is, it's pathological. It's seen as something and known as something that we want to get away from. Well, here, the third part that they talk about is to invite our child's dependence, but to make that dependence restful. That is to say that we bring them towards us rather than push them away with more demands. We make it restful for them to be in our presence. We're not pushing them towards independence, constantly unbalancing their footing by pushing them towards what they don't already know or what they're not comfortable with or another achievement. But we invite the dependence, and we invite them into dependence that's restful, so that it's a place where they can let go of demands. They can let go of all the kinds of expectations that they face in their day-to-day, in school and activities and other places where they might be pushed or driven to perform, and where they are certainly one way or another quantified, measured, graded, compared through competition or other ways that are prevalent in activities or in school or in other contexts where they might find themselves. So that's the third one, to invite restful dependence. And then finally, the fourth one is to be their compass point, to be and act as their guide. So children need orientation. They need help in navigating the day-to-day and also the bigger picture, of course. So we let them know what's ahead of them. That could be as simple, depending on their age, as in the mornings, letting them know what's going to happen in the day, to make sure that we know what time we're picking them up from kindergarten. We tell them, I'll be there at that time. After that, we're going to do this. Or it could be that they're facing some challenge, they're learning something. They come up against the block, they come up against their incapacity, they come up against some limit of their skills, and we're there on right next to them, pointing them in some direction, helping them find the next step, helping them move through something that might be frustrating for them, or they might simply not know what the next step is. And so we can support them in discovering what that might be. We can support them in discovering how things work, anything from learning how to bike or whatever it might be. But we're there, we're using our life experiences and our adult perspective to orient and guide our children. And that could also include honoring their gifts and also introducing them to a trusted adult who might know what we don't know, and who doesn't have all the baggage, or as an elder of mine says, skin in the game. That someone who has perhaps an easier relationship to that, to being their compass point in a given situation. So those are the 4 points that Gabor Maté and Gordon Neufeld speak of in Holding On to Your Kids, for gathering our children back in, for breaking this pattern of peer mentored digital remoteness that seems to befall quite a few of our children these days. And these 4 points that help us gather our children back in, but also put them in relationship to trusted adults of different ages, is a fundamental relational task of any adult in charge of a child, not least us parents. So I hope you found this helpful, and I'd love to hear your comments or your questions or anything you'd like to share in the comments below. And please subscribe to this video and press the bell button, and you'll get a notification of future videos on similar topics. But that's all for now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.